Good day. Randy Franklin Smith here. Today's webinar, Top 11 or 10 Ways to Detect System Intrusions with the Security Log. Somebody's already asked me why I have up there Top 10 instead of 11. Well, you'll see when we get to the list that I actually developed or discovered some additional indicators of system intrusion while we were going along, and I chose to collapse a few of my original items that were pretty similar. And so between collapsing the original items that were similar and adding on the new ones that I discovered, we came up with 10 instead of 11, okay? Actually, the real truth is the 11th way was so hot that the NSA has prohibited me from publishing it to you. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, let's see here. Yes, there will be a recording at the end. We'll be sending you the link to that. Now, the webinar today is brought to you by AlertLogic, and AlertLogic is different than any of the other log management solutions that are out there. It's a log management as a service or on-demand log management solution. And Randy Rosenbaum, after my presentation, will be showing you, with me involved, how to put to work, how you can take the tips that I provide you today and put them directly to work with AlertLogic. So here's what we'll be talking about. First of all, I'm going to set the context of these top 10 indicators. And then I'm also going to point out that there are some best practices required if we're going to set the trap for some of these events to really be recognizable. So I'll show you what I mean by that here in a second. Also, we're going to talk about the fact that you have to look for not just the specific event ID, but sometimes there's some additional criteria. And then we'll get into the actual list. So first of all, as far as context, for today's webinar, all the indicators that we're showing to you should be considered pretty dire. They're indicative that, if this is in fact a malicious or bad occurrence of this event, that the intrusion has already occurred. Likely the bad guy has already gotten admin authority or otherwise compromised the system. So that means that this is not stuff that you should just, be looking at once a day or sending to yourself in a report. These events should be generating as near to possible as real-time alerts as possible. Now, what do I mean by setting the trap via best practices? Well, there's certain shortcuts that some Windows admins take, or there's certain best practices that sometimes we don't follow. And if we do that, then it means that some of the indicators that I show you will not be recognizable because you're actually doing some of the things that we're trying to detect. So I'll explain, I'll call out where that's actually the case, but I just in general want you to get the idea that there's some things that we need to do ahead of time. Sometimes there's things that we need to change about our processes and standards so that we can detect malicious activity when it occurs. Now, event ID plus criteria. Well, with some of this top 10 list, it'll simply just be an event ID that you look for. But for most of these indicators, it's the event ID plus some additional criteria. For example, you may need to check for the existence of a string in a local, in the description of the event. So that may be a thing. Also, you may need to compare two values of the event. You may need to say, well, does computer name equal new domain from the text of the event? Now, I'll be showing you, again, calling out specific cases where this arises, but again, I just want you to get the general idea. Other times, the extra criteria may be a bit more sophisticated. We may need to actually check some value in the event against a list of values that you have created unique to your environment. So, for instance, we're going to be looking for new executables, new programs that are run for the first time that are new or unique to your environment. So prior to that, you'll have needed to baseline all the executables on a baseline system. So we'll talk about that. Turn off my highlighter. There we go. So here's the list. We're going to talk about audit policy changes. If the security log gets cleared, we're going to show you how to detect new local accounts created on servers, members being added to admin groups, successful logon as the built-in admin account. We'll talk about why a system restart may indicate an intrusion, a physical access intrusion. We'll talk about services, scheduled tasks, new executables, and finally, firewall changes. Now, with each one of these events, folks, you can always go to my security log encyclopedia. That's ultimatewindowssecurity.com, and then there's a link right here under Security Log Online Encyclopedia. And for any of these events, we can easily just put the event ID in and look it up. So I'll be referring to that as we go along. So first of all, an audit policy change. What are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about when a bad guy breaks into a system, a knowledgeable hacker or bad guy program, one of the first things it's going to do is shut down auditing. So that would be more or less equivalent to going into your local security policy and just turning off all of your audit policies. Now, if and when that happens, that of course means that nothing's going to be showing up in the security log after that. So we're talking about these, turning off all of our auditing. In fact, configuring it just like you see right there. Well, Windows would allow a bad guy to do that. However, it's going to log this event. Whenever the audit policy is changed, we're going to get a 612 or a 4719. Let's look at those one of those events. Now, by the way, folks, I'm giving you the Windows Server 2003 event IDs and the 2008 event IDs. The 3-digit is what you get in Windows Server 2003. 4-digit is what you find on Windows Server 2008. Now let's look up, let's see, what number was that? 4719, so 4719. So here's an example of the event. It tells you who did it and what the audit policy change was. Now, be aware that, first of all, this event doesn't really tell you who did it, typically, unless the change was made to the actual local security policy and if the system is actually getting its effective setting from the local security policy. If the change was made via a group policy object in Active Directory, then you won't see the name of the person that did it. You'll just see that the local system did it as a result of detecting a change in the applicable group policy objects. So subject may or may not tell you who did this, but it will, at least the security log will always tell you if audit policy is changed. Now, we'll get the same event whether we turn on auditing or turn it off. But typically, you shouldn't be getting any events regarding audit policy change anyway. Audit policy is something you configure right the first time, and then it's very, very stable. So that's why I think you are safe in configuring these events as triggering alerts, because you should hardly, there's very, very, very infrequent instances where you would see a legitimate occurrence of this event. And that one's pretty simple. Folks, if you have questions about any of this stuff or about Alert Logic's demonstration, please use the question and answer feature as much as you would like. We will be tending to all those questions at some point during the webinar. Now, here's the second indicator that your system's been compromised. The next thing a bad guy does, or a bad guy program, is clear the security log after it's compromised a system? Well, the log allows you to clear the log. The Windows allows you to clear the log, but it doesn't let you cover up the fact that you cleared the log. Anytime you clear the security log out, you are going to get a 517 on Windows Server 2003 and XP for that matter, and you're going to get 1102 on Windows Server 2008 and Vista and Windows 7. And that's in answer to your question there, Elizabeth. Elizabeth just asked, you're talking about server events, what about workstation events? So all these event IDs apply to your workstations as well, folks. XP uses the 3-digit event ID, and Vista and Windows 7 use the 4-digit event ID, just like 2008. Now, as far as best practice, here's an example where there's things you need to be doing or not doing for this event to be recognizable. And the simplest point here is don't clear the log. Instead, configure your event log with the largest possible maximum size, and that's like 300 meg on Windows Server 2003 and later. And then just configure the log to overwrite immediately. So just to show you what I'm talking about there, I'm going to bring up Event Viewer. And this, folks, is Event Viewer on Windows 7, but it's pretty similar to what you'll find on any other version of Windows. We go to the security log, and then we go to Properties, and we configure the size of the log, and then what happens when the log fills up. That's what we're talking about there. And so what our recommendation is here is, if we're going to correctly interpret these as malicious events, then we can't be clearing the log as part of our normal everyday operations, right? And so what that means is, with your log management process, you need to be, yes, dumping out the event logs and collecting them to your centralized log management solution, but you shouldn't be, in addition to that, clearing the log every time. You should just be dumping the most recent events. And any of the log management solutions out there will allow you to do that. I'm going to take care of Francis's question here. Randy, on Event 517, you mentioned to configure largest possible maximum size. Can you tell us how to configure a rotating log? There are some registry settings that allow you to tell Windows to cut a new log every time the log fills up. And so that just means that folder will keep expanding as you get new logs. But, folks, the reason I don't get into that and don't recommend it is for these event logs to be of value to you, both from a prosecutorial point of view, from a security incident and forensics point of view, monitoring, intrusion detection, any of those things, you can't leave these events on the target system. You've got to get these events off that system into your log management solution, whatever that is. And we'll be showing you a really neat one today from AlertLogic. But that's the important thing. Keeping the logs on the local system just doesn't cut it. Bill asked a question that I'll handle right now, too. Actually, I'm going to save some of these. I want to make sure I stay on schedule here. We will answer all of the questions. I see so many coming in that I think I'm going to have to save these towards the end. But we're going to answer everybody's question. Now, number 3 indicator, system has been compromised, is a new account being created for that bad guy. That is a backdoor account. Now, first of all, let's talk about member servers. In that case, we're talking about local accounts on the member server. That means that essentially somebody came in, as it were, to computer management or through the necessary APIs and created a user account here under local users and groups. We're not talking about Active Directory domain accounts. So how do we detect when a new account is created there? Well, we look for event ID 624 or 472. Now, if you have a log management solution and you're analyzing both events from member servers, maybe workstations, and domain controllers, then that 624 is also going to be logged whenever a new account is created in Active Directory, which, strictly speaking, is not what we're looking at here. We're looking for somebody who's created a backdoor account on a compromised Windows server. So how do we distinguish 624s pertaining to a new domain account as opposed to 624s pertaining to a new local account? Well, let's look at an example of one of these events. So I'll bring up event ID 624. And let's look at an example of that event. So new user account created, account name Harold. Now look at that right there, new domain, ELM. All right. Now take that string, new domain. That string, folks, if this is a new account created in Active Directory, well, that will be the name of the domain. On the other hand, if this is simply a new user account created on a member server, a new local account created on that member server, then the new domain field right here will be filled in with the computer's name, not the domain name. Make sense? So all we have to do is compare the string you see right here, under new domain name, compare that to the name of the computer that generated the event, which that's always present in the header of the event. If we go to Event Viewer, just look at an event here. See, there's the name of the computer right there. So if new domain name equals computer name, as I've documented right here on the slide, then we know that this is a new local account created on a member server, and in that case, we would alert. Now, in order for this indicator to work, you need to be following this best practice, and that is don't be using local accounts. This is just one of many reasons for that, but the bottom line is use domain accounts, especially for people. But really, even your service accounts, your application accounts, all of those can and should be domain accounts, and there's many, many reasons why. But today we'll just highlight the fact that this allows us to then alert on and follow up on any new local accounts that we see on member servers. Now that kind of begs the question, though, well, what about detecting unauthorized accounts in Active Directory? What happens if somebody compromises Active Directory or a domain controller and they create their backdoor user account as a domain account in AD instead of on the local server? Well, that's completely possible, but that's a little more difficult to detect and distinguish, compared to a legitimate new account that you create for a new hire, for instance. What I recommend is building something into your provisioning process. That is, the process you follow when you create a new account, some kind of standard, either a naming convention, or maybe you take one of the typically unused fields and just put some kind of value in there. Like maybe you don't use the office field. There's a field called office where you could document the office that somebody works at. If you don't use that field, then always plug it in with some known value. Then what we could do is look for that value in our alert rule, and if we don't see that value, then we know that somebody that doesn't know about that rule created the new user account. Now, is it foolproof? No. Is it kind of security through obscurity? Yes. But it can be a very effective way to identify new accounts that have not gone through the normal process. Maybe you would fill into that office field or some other unused field, the work order number or the ticket number that provisioned that new account. Number 4, new member added to a privileged group. Now, the privileged groups that are present for any system out there, any of you guys, of course, are the ones that you see there: administrators, domain admins, account operators, enterprise admins, and schema admins. But there may be other groups that are privileged from your point of view that give you access to very, very important information or processes or systems. Also, of course, you can nest groups, right? So we can make some other group a member of administrators. So we need to know whenever a new member is added to any of those groups. The list that you see here is just to get you started. Now, why do we have so many different event IDs for new member being added to a group? Well, that's because in Active Directory you have domain local groups, domain global groups, and universal groups. And the difference between them is beyond the scope of this discussion, but what it does mean is that there's different event IDs for each scope of group. The rules that you'll see here will generate alerts whenever somebody's added to the administrators group, either in Active Directory or on a local member server. You just look for 636 or 4732 with the word administrators in the text of the event. And the same for those other events for domain admins, enterprise admins, and so on. But if you've got a group called IT operators, which is in turn a member of domain admins, well, then you would need to create an alert for that too, right? If you see that event number for your group called IT operators, kick off an alert as well. Be careful, though, with how much nesting of groups that you do, especially in those admin groups, because I have seen some crazy examples of multiple group nesting levels to where the organization just lost control of who had domain admin authority. All right, number 5, successful logon as built-in administrator. All right, every bad guy out there, every bad guy program out there knows that there's a built-in admin account in Windows, and you can't delete that account, and usually it's not disabled. Now, here's an important best practice. You should never be logging on as administrator. Every admin should have his or her own distinct admin account, and it should be a very, very important rule, sacred rule, that everybody logs on as their account. So, therefore, unless there's some kind of crazy situation where all those accounts get locked out or disabled or whatever, you should never see successful logons as the built-in admin account. And therefore, if you do, that indicates one of 3 things. A, there's a legitimate emergency. Unlikely. B, somebody's not following policy. Or 3, the system's been compromised. So all you need to do is look for those event IDs, 528, 540, 4624, where the username is administrator, or if you've renamed the administrator account, then, of course, whatever you've renamed it to. And my best practice here, that's not actually, that's kind of a typo there. Let me fix that for you. Number 5. And I'll fix this in the slides. Don't use the built-in administrator account, not group. There, that looks better, huh? And Randy, I think you are unmuted there. Number 6, system restarted. This brings in events 512, 4608. Okay, now, obviously there are going to be some legitimate instances of your system starting up. However, the reason it's useful to alert on this is any of your physical access attacks, other than just ripping a drive out and walking away with it. But, there's a plethora of methods out there for being able to break into a system if you have local physical access to the computer. That is, you can touch the server or the workstation. Well, of course, with all of those, the system's going to have to be shut down while you're doing that. When the system boots up, it's going to log this event, either 512 or 4608. So what you would ideally want to be able to do there is compare system restarts to your scheduled system restarts. If this was something unscheduled, then you'll have to follow up on it. One of the things you'll want to look at from the log is how long was the system down. and you also want to compare that to whatever records you have for who was in the computer room or the technology room at that time. But that can be a clue. An unscheduled system restart can be a clue that someone has been physically tampering with that server. Number 7, new service installed. Again, could there be, legitimate instances of this? Sure. If you're installing a new agent of some type on all your servers, and that agent, of course, is going to run as a service, then you'll get either Event ID 601 or 4697 on those systems. But it could also indicate that someone has installed some type of unauthorized software that runs in the background as a service. And so you'll want to compare that to your scheduled, normal, authorized software installation. And that event, 4697, gives you the information that you need to know. Let's pull that up, 4697. And if we go down to an example of it, so it shows you who did it, and it gives you the name of the service, the name of the executable that hosts that service, and a few other pieces of information like, does the service start up automatically, who does the service run as, and so on. So, again, that should be really, infrequent where you get legitimate instances of that event, right? So it should be safe to pop off an alert when you see that. Similar to that would be scheduled tasks. Now, probably a lot of you out there use scheduled tasks for legitimate reasons, but how often do you schedule new tasks? And maybe what we could do is use some additional criteria here to weed out the legitimate instances of this event. So first of all, the event that tells us that a new scheduled task was created is either 602 or 4698. But what you could do is compare the account names to a predetermined list of account names. Either that would be the folks authorized to schedule scheduled tasks, or perhaps you have an account that is used to execute all scheduled tasks. One of the things you have to specify when you schedule a new task to run every night or whatever is it'll ask you, okay, well, what account should this task run as? So if you see a new task that's not running as that normal account, that could be used as additional criteria to help weed out the legitimate examples. Again, this is going to depend on your environment a little bit. If you have an environment where you don't use scheduled tasks whatsoever, then you don't need to add any additional criteria. You see event 602, pop off the alert. Now here's one I really, really love, and that is a new executable. What we're looking for is to have an alert the first time we see any program executed that's not on our list of known standard executables. What event are we going to use for that? Well, it'll be 592, 40, or 4688. Those events are logged every time any process is run. Anytime you run an executable, you'll get that event. So, of course, we have to add some additional criteria on the image file name. Let me show you what I'm talking about there. Let's look up 592. So here, a new process has been created, image file name. So this is Notepad running in the WinNT System32 folder. And then it tells you who executed the program. All right, great. What we need to do is compare that information right there to our list of known executables. How do you come up with that list? Well, there's a couple ways. I mean, you could collect all your 592s for 30 days and then come up with a distinct list of unique executable image file names. That'd be one way. And that's the way I prefer because it shows you the actual usage. You could also take a baseline system that's known to be clean and simply run the dir command. Just to go to the root of the C drive and say dir start.exe/s, which tells it, hey, start at the C drive, work your way down, and give me a list of all the exe files on this entire system. And then we could put that into our alert criteria. Of course, that would tell you all of the potential executables on the system, whereas if we look at 30 days worth of these two event IDs, that would tell us all of the programs that are actually run, and would be more restrictive possibly. But this is really awesome because this tells you the first time any new program is run in your environment. The only time, how many false positives will you get from legitimate instances of this? Well, on Patch Tuesday, you can expect to see this come up, or whenever it is that you push new patches out, because those patches are, executables, I think usually named after the knowledge base article, or anytime you update or install any new software, right, you're liable to get an alert. But other than that, this will be a really valuable rule. Finally, oftentimes when you install software, one of the first things the software does is change around whenever you install bad guy software or spyware or whatever, it's going to go into your Windows firewall and reconfigure it to allow it to communicate with the outside world. So that's a little bit easier to catch. What you're looking at there are those event IDs. On 2003, it's just 852. On 2008, Vista and Windows 7, you're looking for those 49, 46, 47, 48 event IDs. But either way, those are the event IDs that specifically tell you something has changed about the firewall. Now, there's lots of other firewall events, but those events get logged whenever the system starts up, so we don't want those. We just want to know when there's actually a change to the firewall configuration, and that's what you'll get from those events. So the bottom line is, there are things that you need to be doing ahead of time or not be doing ahead of time in order to make some of these indicators recognizable. Also, with a lot of these events, it's more than just looking for the event ID. It's looking for something else in addition to that event ID to see that this is really a suspicious occurrence. There may be some advanced research necessary. For instance, you need to baseline. What are all the executables, known, standard executables in my environment? And here's the other thing. These events in particular that we covered today are not stuff that it's going to do you much good to find out about 24 hours later, or every time you go in and manually review the event log or get a report about these events. These are things that you need to get as close to a real-time alert to your pager or whatever as possible. So that means you need a log management solution that's collecting those events and frequently or as close to real time, and then has the power to take those event IDs and other criteria, and when it sees something that matches, to alert you. And that's something that Alert Logic does a good job of. And the other cool thing with Alert Logic is there's no software to install. They drop an appliance on you, and then everything else is managed through their secure operations center as a service. And so with that in mind, then, Randy, I'm going to make you the presenter, Randy Rosenbaum, and you can take it away.
Sounds good. Let me just share my screen here. All right, Randy, appreciate it. I'm Randy Rosenbaum with Alert Logic, and Randy, that was a great presentation, and we're going to kind of feed right off of that into a little bit about our log management solution. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, and then Randy and myself will kind of walk you through some of the feature functions of our log management solution and kind of show you different ways where you can get alerted on suspicious activity, etc. But real quick, who is Alert Logic, just so we're all on the same page? We were founded in 2002. We're based here in beautiful Houston, Texas. At least it's beautiful today. We have about 1,000 customers, and our service renewal rate is at 99%. And this is very important to us because we actually sell our service on a monthly recurring model. So every month we have to earn our customers' business, and right now we're at about a 1% churn rate, which is really low, or a service renewal rate of 99%, which is really high. So we're very proud of that. Our focus is compliance and security, powered by the cloud, and our differentiator, as Randy mentioned, is the way that we deliver these solutions to you. So just real quick, kind of an overview of the different types of customers that we have, and this is really a good testament of the cloud model, is that really doesn't matter what industry that you're in or what size of company that you are, we kind of cover the gamut because everyone needs log management. We also do intrusion detection and vulnerability management. I have our partners highlighted there, so if you are working with any type of service provider or hosting company, and you're outsourcing, some infrastructure or hosting your infrastructure with those companies, we do partner with a lot of those companies, and they use our solution all the time just because of our cloud model. It's very effective for them, and it's very effective for you as a customer. So a little bit about the cloud solution and what this looks like. So, instead of going out and having to deploy the infrastructure that you would need to effectively do log management, which means, web servers and storage devices, and because you got to store this log data in database and collection servers, as Randy mentioned, all you have to do is deploy this collection device. And this collection device sits out there, and all it's doing is collecting, prioritizing, and then sending that log data into the cloud. What that looks like from a delivery model standpoint is, if you start at the bottom, I have a very basic network diagram, and you see our collection device in there, and then it's sending that information into the cloud. And then we have redundant data centers in Houston and Atlanta, and we use grid-based technology both on the processing side and on the data retention side. So on the processing side, when you have to actually go through this log data, our grid allows for very rapid response in terms of getting your information. So in a few minutes, we're going to kind of look at searching through log data and doing forensic analysis. And one of the things that Randy pointed out was, after an attack occurs, you have to go in there and do the forensic analysis to see exactly what happened. Our grid-based model allows you to do that very, very quickly. Now, we also have data retention. So we have a flat file proprietary storage system where you can store as much log data as you would like. So we include storage within our solution. You don't have to actually go out and buy additional storage or use the storage that you have. And then on top of that, we have monitoring services. So actually, just to give you guys a little bit of privied information, we're going to be introducing our log management service in the beginning into mid Q1, and it's going to actually be a service where you could have someone in our security operations center actually review that log data for you, because we know that it's not exactly the most exciting thing to do. And a lot of times you would want that extra human set of eyes reviewing that data, and we have trained security experts in our data center. Actually, now they're looking at IDS information, and we're expanding that so they can look at our customers' log data to kind of determine if there's any suspicious activity. So that brings us to our log management solution, and we're collecting logs from any syslog or Windows source. It's always on. Since it's a cloud solution, we're actually handling all the maintenance, upgrades, and support in our infrastructure and in our data centers. So you don't have to do that. We don't charge you for any software. We don't charge you for any hardware. There's no maintenance fees involved. It's a very low-cost solution where you can effectively manage your log data. That's another reason why these hosting companies and service providers like to use our model so much and pass it on to their customers. But if you're an end user and you might not have, you might not have an additional resource to maintain an on-premise appliance solution, this is a fantastic way to do that. So why the cloud is better for log management? We actually had this non-database management system, grid computing, as I explained, that's at least 10 times faster. 10 times faster in reporting and searching of log data that you just cannot find in appliance-based solutions. So if you're out there looking at like LogLogic or LogRhythm or any of those appliance-based log management solutions, you already know the pain of actually having to maintain and deploy that system, as well as run searches on that log data, and then you probably also have to purchase additional log storage. So we're getting rid of all of those costs with our solution that's in the cloud. Okay, so we'll get to the benefit summary in a minute, but I'm going to switch over real quick and bring up the product so we can take a look at that. Randy, you seeing this okay?
Yep, looks great.
Okay, good. So this is our solution. Real quick, just to kind of give you an overview of the summary page. This is a product where you can view both intrusion detection system, vulnerability assessment information, and log data in one console. It's web-based. This is actually what our customers would go in there and use. And we're going to start off by actually taking a look at some correlation policies. And this isn't exactly how we kick off every demo, but I'm limited on the amount of time that we have. And there's a few things that Randy and I discussed that we definitely want to show you. So I'm going to go to the log correlation section. Here you would have all your log correlation policies. We have several that are out of the box. What you're seeing here are ones that we've created, and then you can go through here and manage all these. So Randy Franklin-Smith and I actually created one this morning that we're going to walk you through. And these are the type of correlation policies that are going to review this log data and then kick off any type of alert when you need to be alerted on any type of suspicious activity. So we have one here that's new domain admin detected, and I'm going to click on that.
And that corresponds to, let's see, number 4 in my list, what we're going to show you right here.
Right. So, Randy, do you want to kind of talk about this, or you want me to?
Yeah, I'll do it. So we
Okay.
gave it the title, New Domain Admin Detected. And let's see, the first really kind of important part is if we scroll down to selected message type. So Alert Logic has already gone through all of the events in the Windows security log and quite a few other products too, like NetScreen and whatnot, and put these events in by their English description. So you see we selected Windows group member added, which, is in the category of account modification.
Right, and here we have all these, several different types of message categories.
And so Windows group member added. Now, of course, you guys remember we have to whittle that down and make it a little more specific. So we also added under our correlation messages that contain certain values, we are doing a check on the target group field. So that's the group to which the new member was added. And if we, and they've got all of the fields already parsed out there, which is really, really nice, folks, for every different event. And if you're familiar with the Windows security log, you know that each event ID has a different set of fields that show up in the description. So they've already got that normalized and parsed out. And so all we had to do is go in there under correlate by group or correlate by property or field value and say, okay, let's look for this particular event, that is new member added to a group, where the target group is domain admins. And when that's the case, then we're going to send out a message, and we get to type in the exact text of the message, and here we put in new domain admin added, : and then we're plugging in who was added, because that's one of the fields that's available in event ID 632, and that is member name. Now, we could add more information there. We probably ought to add the domain name everything else, and we could easily do that. But that's just
it's very easy to go through and and
right there.
So you can just insert the field. And this is the email that's actually going to be kicked off to you when, this event is triggered. And we have it, you can set it up to trigger, we have it set up so every time a new message occurs. So, one message within 1 minute. But for things like, failed login attempts, if you want to see, you want to be notified on those, you can set it up to, 10 failed login attempts within a minute or within 5 minutes. Some sort of suspicious activity is going on there. So these are correlation policies. This would actually generate alert. And right now what you're seeing is actually the log messages. So there's a few things here that I can show you. And if I click on the logs tab, it's going to bring it up. And here's some incidents. So if you do get an email, you can go through here, and here's a complete list of incidents, and it'll list it out by the day it happened, and then it's going to give you some more information about the activity and whatnot. But you can click on that and see exactly what's going on with that suspicious activity and look at some of that log data. But I also wanted to show you ways where you can actually browse through the log messages and begin to do forensic analysis. So this is our log manager solution, and why our customers are coming in here all the time is they really want to review a lot of this log data and start sifting through and looking at this information. We've given our customers a really easy way to do that by creating everything that you see here that I'm mousing over is a hyperlink. So it's very easy to sort on that data. We also give you contextual views. So here I can go to new user, added, group, added, and click on administrator, and it's going to automatically sort all these log messages and give you information based on just that. Now, these are all the administrators that were added to a group, and you can even sort these down a little bit more if you wanted to by clicking on this has Windows group member added, if it was Unix group member added, or, Oracle group member added, etc. You can click on the specific ones. It will sort it by that particular name, or if you want to click on a specific server name, it would sort by that. So we give you a really easy way to review all this data. Now, once you narrow down the data to exactly what you're looking for and what you want, you can actually save that as a report. And so you can save this view as a report and have it, be emailed to your desktop every morning so you can review that data. So if you want to take a look at every Windows group member added, from the day before or for a certain time period, et cetera, we make it really easy for you to do that.
Very nice.
So that's really all I have there.
We got lots of questions whenever you're ready.
Yeah, let's go. We can go through questions. I was just going to go through the benefit summary real quick, but
go ahead.
As you can see, it's a cloud solution. It's very easy to get up and running because all you have to do is plug in that appliance, configure where you want to generate or collect the logs from, and then it gets pushed up into the cloud. You log on to the system via any web browser, and you're up and running. It's great for compliance reasons like PCI. You have to review log data on a daily basis. As you can see, it's very easy to go through here and review that necessary data. So if you want to set up specific reports and just look for suspicious activity and review that data, it's very, very easy to do. You can just set up those save views, or you can set up those correlation policies and alert you when something happens. And then overall, improving that overall network security. So I have a few statements in here that talks about both log data as well as IDS and vulnerability assessment. So if you need any of those, obviously we have all three of those solutions that are available, and they're all available in the same way through the cloud. So That's all I have. If you want any more information, visit our website, give us a call, check out our blog. All the information that you'll need is there, but let's go ahead and start tackling some questions.
Okay. So hang in there, everybody. We'll get everybody's question answered. First one for you, Randy. Is it possible to monitor NAS logs through this tool, network attack storage?
Right. If it dumps it out to a syslog, yes. So I'm not sure exactly. I've never actually gotten that question before, but
fair enough.
If it dumps it out to a syslog, absolutely.
Does AlertLogic pull logs from applications? So this is kind of similar. Exchange, SQL, antivirus. Can't you also pull text logs too? I think, Randy.
Yes. So we pull all log data from everything that you just mentioned, and we can parse through all the log data from everything you just mentioned. We can actually pull log data from anything. It's just what we parse. So in some of the views that I was just showing you, if there's messages that we're collecting that's data that we're not parsing, maybe from a proprietary application or something like that, the log data will still show up, and we'll give you the ability to go in there and review all that log data and report on it. But when we parse the log data is when we can create hyperlinks on it, alert on it, etc. But we have an extensive list of applications as well as operating systems that we parse data from.
And is that on the web, or should they contact you to? Because that was the other thing he asked. Is there a list of everything you parse?
Yeah, that list is being updated constantly. So definitely contact us. You can call this phone number that I have up on there now. We have a couple of different features. We can go in and request some information from salespeople. But if you're asking us specifically, we'll try to get contact information off of this webinar and respond to you with that info. I just don't have it right in front of me, the complete list.
Okay, fair enough. Drew would like to know, is this a non-managed or self-managed product? So I'll just turn that question over to you because there's different ways to interpret it.
Yeah, so right now it's self-managed in the way that you go in and actually review all that log data. But we manage the infrastructure in the back end on it and keep it up and running.
Yeah.
So any types of maintenance or bug fix, etc., we handle all of that. That's kind of the part of the software as a service piece that we're handling. And then, as I mentioned in Q1, we're actually going to have a service to where your log data can be reviewed by someone in our security operations center to detect suspicious activity. So it's actually a little bit of everything he mentioned.
How many monitored device types are supported? So are you talking about different types, Nathan, or are you talking about sheer quantity of devices can be monitored? Let's leave that question with him for clarification. What do you think, Randy?
Okay, that's fine. Next
question. Quantity and number. Quantity and number are the same thing, Nathan. Let's take it.
So it's unlimited. The amount of the devices that we can collect from, or if you want to collect log data from 10,000 devices, that's fine. It would require a little bit. It would require some additional collection devices on our end, but that's not a big deal at all. That's just our collection device only handles, I believe, up to about 3,000 events per second. So you just need another one, but it's not a big deal at all. So the amount, it really doesn't matter. I think he's also asking, or he might also be asking how many different applications do we parse log data from, and
that question came up.
Right, we already kind of covered that.
Okay. Nathan also asked, does the fact that the system normalized raw events mean that these events are stored and processed on your system are no longer considered forensically sound in a court of law. Well, I'm going to throw my 2 cents in there, and then, Randy, you can take a shot at it. First of all, normalizing event data doesn't necessarily mean that you're altering the data. It just means how the system parses and analyzes it. The event data can remain in its standard format, and we'll let Randy answer if and how that happens. But the other thing, Nathan, is that, just because you process log data doesn't mean that it's no longer admissible as evidence as an original record. Because if you look at the Department of Justice information, for instance, if you have a process for a procedure for processing log data, and if you can show that process was followed, then it's okay. Because, for instance, Microsoft's audit collection solution, they put gobs and gobs of legal research into it, because the way they handle it is the way the log data is stored, it's stored in an ultra normalized database that bears no resemblance to the original log data. But before they went that route, they really researched it from the legal point of view. So that's my 2 cents, Randy.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I just missed that.
The way you store the log data, are you storing the original event, or the fact that you're normalizing it? Does that mean that you're reparsing it and storing the log data totally different than how it was originally captured? Because there's conflicting views on how admissible that becomes then.
Yeah, I would have to. I might have to get back to him. I believe that it's that the log data is stored. The raw log data is stored as raw log data, and then when it goes through the system, we normalize it and parse it out for normalization. But I believe that that raw log data
is probably stored the way it was.
It's probably stored in the way it was originally. Yeah, because I know that if for whatever reason, if a customer ever needs their log data back, that's how we give that back to them.
Yeah. That's completely consistent with what I know about Alert Logic in general and about log management solutions, or I should say specifically in log management solutions in general, is whether this really turns out to be an issue in the courts or not. Everybody is on top of it, and so the archived log data is stored the way it was created, and then there's usually a separate parallel system used for analysis and reporting and so on. So you can get confirmation from Alert Logic.
Confirmation and get back, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's see here. Next question. This comes from Nathan, too, and a bunch of other people are asking. This question always comes up with Alert Logic. How do you address potential security compliance concerns regarding storing logs in the cloud as opposed to on client premises?
Right. I think I get this question every single webinar I do.
Yep.
So we have a good answer. We go through extensive security measures, and actually our auditor was here last week. So we're SAS 70 Type 2 audited against specific policies and security requirements that we have set in place to ensure that data is protected, both physical security measures and network security measures. So we have those in place to ensure that data is extremely safe. Now, we worked with several QSAs on a PCI basis, as well as some of the Big Four auditing firms, to ensure that it satisfies the compliance requirements. So we've gone through extensive measures because the number one reason why our customers come to us is for compliance, and it's never been an issue that the data is stored in our data centers, because we go through all of these measures and we can provide copies of the SAS 70 Type 2 audit report that shows that we've that we're passing all of the policies that we have in place.
And frankly, for especially medium and small companies, your secure operations center is probably stronger than what especially a small and medium-sized company, would ever be able to put together.
Yeah, we have a lot of security measures in place. I mean, I've worked here for about 2 years, and I've been in our security operations center one time. They just don't we just have a lot of policies in place to ensure that the people that are accessing our security operations center are the right people. We have a lot of physical security in place. Every employee here has to take an FBI background check. So there's a lot of things, a lot of hoops that we jump through to ensure that our customers' data is secure. Because of our delivery model, it's the only way we can stay in business, so we take it very seriously.
How do you collect log data? Is there an agent, or does your appliance go out there and pull the log data in?
Yeah, the appliance goes out there and pulls it in, or it gets pushed to, depending on what type of.
Well, with syslog, it would get pushed to your appliance, right?
Right. So with Windows, it gets pulled in. So we did that on purpose because we didn't want another. Our customers don't want another agent and have to maintain that agent. So we always say it's an appliance because it looks like an appliance, but there's not a lot of smart technology on the appliance. It's really used as a collection device.
Fair enough.
But it has different things on there, like if for whatever reason, if you're caught in a natural disaster and you lose internet connectivity for a certain period of time, that log data can be stored on those appliances for, I believe, up to about 5 days, and then once you get internet connectivity again, it can get pushed to our data center. So we have some technology in place on the appliance to ensure that that the log data is consistent and can get to our data centers.
Let's see here. Drew says, I'm surprised with a few of the customers. He would have assumed that those companies would be required to retain control of their log data, logs, analysis, storage, and so on. Being in the power industry, he's concerned that they can't hand over their logs to a third party. So, again, that's, the thing to do it'd be interesting then, Drew, to find out about those companies and how they were able to make that decision, because this is a model that's been working, and like you saw with some of those company names, they're able to demonstrate that their compliance needs are being met and their security requirements are. Drew also wants to know from you, Randy, vulnerability scanners. Can you pull in the log results from vulnerability scanners like WebInspect, NTO Spider, AppScan, Nessus, ISS, stuff like that? If it's a log, you can pull it in, but do you know of any folks that are already doing that? Maybe you already have parsing rules for some of those vulnerability scanners? Yeah,
we actually don't have parsing rules for that yet, so it's on the roadmap to bring that data in. We have a lot of questions around that, but if it's security incident event management, so we're looking at that and bringing that's actually pretty high on the priority list. So not right now. We can bring in that data, but it's not parsed. So the parsed data is the most I guess
valuable.
Comes to log data, most valuable. Yeah.
Drew also asks about pricing. That's a question that always comes up.
Sure. So we actually just lowered our prices. I believe it starts at about $800. So I don't have. I'm looking around my desk right now for a price sheet, but it starts around $800 a month.
Gotcha. And it's going to depend on how many events. It's based upon how many events you monitor, right?
Events per second, correct.
Events per second.
And we have calculations to We have calculators here. You know, a lot of people obviously don't know what their events per second are. I mean, a good rule of thumb is, 1 event per second per node. So node that you want to monitor logs from.
All right. All right, I'm going to get to some.
Server, you can bring in a lot more, but that's a good rule of thumb.
Any possibility of offering your software as non-cloud? Got a couple questions like that.
As non-cloud, no, not. I mean,
that's your whole.
We could take those offline. Yeah, we have requests from like the Department of Defense, organizations within the DoD that cannot actually take their log data and it cannot leave their site. So they're looking at building like a private cloud where a solution would be. So if you have those type of requirements, we'd be interested in talking to you about that.
All right, fair enough. And let's see here. Is AlertLogic considered an IDS or IPS device?
We do have our Threat Manager product, and it's an IDS.
Okay, but that's different than what we demonstrated today.
Yes, absolutely. Now,
right.
One console for all the solutions, but it is different.
All right, that's cool. Well, let me get to some of the questions that apply to me. Trent asks, I have a closed system that keeps getting unexplained 612 events. Can powering down cause these codes when auditing? And so, folks, you'll remember that, or you may not remember, but event ID 612 is where your audit policy has changed. Trent, the only time you should be getting that event is, it sounds to me like you probably have Windows Server 2000, Windows 2000 server running. That's the last version of Windows that incorrectly generated that event. Why don't you check that and come back to me, and I'll readdress your question here in a second. Elizabeth asks, we also have Windows 2000 and NT. Are these the same codes? Elizabeth, for the most part, yes. If you go to my Security Log Encyclopedia, to which I was referring today, we document back to Windows 2000. We don't document NT. My condolences to you that you're still having to maintain NT systems. That's got to be tough from a security point of view. Let's see here. William asks, configure up to 250 meg security log. Isn't there a hit on performance? Okay, so remember, folks, when I said, configure your security logs to 200 meg on Windows 2000, 300 meg on 2003 and later, does that create a hit on performance? No, it doesn't. Windows can efficiently manage very large security logs without a performance degradation. If you get above those thresholds, 200 meg for 2000, 300 meg for later versions of Windows, you can run into some data corruption issues. Those have supposedly been solved on Windows Server 2008. I can't directly confirm that. Jim asks, does 1102 also show when the security logs stopped? So we're talking about event ID 1102, and that one is security log cleared. So you should not be able to stop the security logging service. That's, if you try to stop that service, Windows doesn't let you. If it just happens, well, if the security log service is stopped, then it can't log an event telling you that it's stopped. But what you'll see is a absence of events for some amount of time. Frank says, does group policy or server settings take precedent? So remember, folks, when I talked about the local security policy tool and then group policy objects, well, policies configured in group policy objects up in Active Directory always take precedence over the local security policy of that system. So when you try to edit a setting that's already been managed by group policy, then on Windows 2003 and later, I think, it'll be disabled. You'll be able to see what the setting is, but you won't be able to change it. On Windows 2000, it displays it a little bit differently. But short answer to your question is group policy overrides the local policy. Aaron, where can I find a complete list of event IDs? Oh, come on, Aaron. How did you get on my list in the first place? All you have to do is go to ultimatewindowssecurity.com and look for Security Log Encyclopedia. It's got every event logged by Windows 2000 all the way up through Windows 7. That's all you have to do. And if you want other deliverables that you can download and whatnot, check out my Security Log resource kit at that same site. You ask, is that available on Microsoft support site? They have something like that, but I promise you, Aaron, at the risk of being self-aggrandizing, my list is far more accurate. Sean, did you say we would be looking at the domain controller logs for these events? So, Sean, the approach I took on this list of events is that you're monitoring both your domain controller and server event logs. Jim, it refers to tip number 5, and that is a successful logon as built-in administrator. And he says, if a machine is infected, sometimes it's considered best practice to log in as the local administrator as opposed to the domain admin account. Well, here's the thing, Jim. Best practice is create a separate group called Workstation Admins and use group policy to put that domain group in the local admins group of all of your workstations. And that way you can log on as your normal domain account, but you're not a domain admin. You're a member of Workstation Admins, which in turn is a member of the local administrators group on each workstation. So that's my thought there. Virgil, for system restarted, will it generate a 512 when physically unplugging the power cord? Yes, not at the time that you physically unplug the power cord, but the next time you turn the computer on. See, 512 isn't that the system was shut down. 512 is that the system was started. Number 8, tip number 8, Soya is referring to, and that is the one on scheduled tasks. Does event ID 602 show in the domain controller security logs or only generated in the local computers? So if you schedule a task, that's going to show up on the computer where you scheduled the task. This is not something that gets passed on to the domain controller. Now, if you schedule a task on the domain controller, then it'll show up in that computer's log. Mark, do you need any additional audit policies enabled to see the effects of slide 9? So let's go to tip number 9. That's new executable. Well, with all of these events, you'll need to know what the audit policy is for that event. So slide number 9, or tip number 9, was a new executable, event ID 592. So if you want to know for any of these folks which audit policy is required in order to get this event, then here, all you have to do is go to, again, my Security Log Encyclopedia, which I'll put up here, put in that event number, and we're already on event ID 592, and just look over here in category. See, it's process tracking. So you need to make sure that your process tracking category audit policy is turned on. If this is one of the new events for Windows Server 2008 and later, like 4688, then you may remember that in addition to the category, there's a subcategory. So if you're configuring your audit policy by subcategory, you would need the process creation policy turned on. And let's see, next question from Jesse. Can you show which audit policy settings need to be enabled? Okay, just answered that one. Wow, a bunch of people asked that. So there's your answer. Process tracking on 2003, if you're auditing at the subcategory level. On 2008, you'll need the process creation one turned on. Gail asks, when referencing the EXE alerts, are they performed off of a hash value? No. That's the answer. For instance, what if there is an instance of a file of a known EXE? Would that be logged? So, no. With the scheme that I've just presented, it's all based upon the name of the executable. You would need something beyond the native functionality of Windows if you're going to be, tracking executables based upon the hash, which I think is, obviously a great idea, but in looking at what's just available with native Windows functionality, no. And let's see here. Michael asks, are there any Active Directory changes that can occur that do not end up in the logs configured properly, like through PowerShell scripts? All right, well, that is the beauty of the Windows security log. It doesn't matter whether you make a change via Active Directory users' computers, through PowerShell, through ADSI, through the net command on the command line. All of those filter down through the same security subsystem, and it's in the security subsystem where these events are generated. So it's pretty hard to bypass the security log. And let's see here. Just seeing if I've got any other questions filtering through any of the... and just to emphasize, Mark asks, for each of these items to be logged, what audit policy settings have to be turned on? Do you recommend logging all items? So, no, we don't recommend turning on every one of your 9 audit policies, or in Windows Server 2008, 50-plus audit subcategories. Again, for any of these, if I would have thought of it, I would have created a slide that says, okay, to get these top 10, you need to turn on these 5 audit policies. But just look up the event number right here in my Security Log Encyclopedia, and then you'll see which audit policies need to be turned over right over here under category and subcategory. Whoops, category and subcategory that I've just highlighted there. Is it possible to trigger an email on membership changes on a particular group with standard Windows Server 2008 utilities? That comes from Svetlana. Sort of. Windows Server 2008 allows you to set up triggers, but you would still need a executable that can send an email out, so it would be quite a Rube Goldberg-ish thing, and you're going to save so much money in terms of manpower resources by getting a log management solution, like our sponsor today, AlertLogic. I've not seen any company successfully do log management without a log management solution, except certain Department of Defense contractors where they have a ratio of about 1 admin to every 10 workstations, and whose job is just to monitor the security logs. But in the commercial world, that doesn't happen. And they have really boring jobs, let me tell you. And then let's see here. Francis asks, is there an event ID for the replacement of an executable? No. That would be a nice event, but there's nothing like that in the security log. Drew asks about my resource kit. Does it include content similar to what we did today? It does. What you'll want to do is look at the actual webinar titles in the resource kit to get an idea of what's there. And I think that is just about all of the questions. Thanks a lot, Randy, for making today's webinar possible. And as always, I think you got a neat solution there with being able to get log management without really installing any software, buying any hardware. It's great.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everything, for your presentation. It was great information.
All right, everybody. Hope you have a good day.